Is NATO preparing for the final war with Russia? Well, maybe so. NATO has considerably increased its military presence in the Baltic countries, Poland and Romania, and is actively drawing ever new states into its orbit. Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu said, quote, in the past year alone, NATO has deployed 13 times more troops, 8 times more military aircraft, and up to 300 tanks and infantry fighting vehicles to the Baltic states, Poland, and Romania, he told an annual meeting of top Russian military officials in Moscow. The 28-nation North Atlantic Alliance is actively facilitating the entry of the former Yugoslav republics, Georgia and Ukraine, and is drawing Finland, Sweden, and Moldavia into its orbit. It has also set up a cybersecurity center in Estonia and a strategic propaganda center in Latvia. In the latest such move, NATO Military Command redeployed around 70 U.S. tanks to Romania. This is certainly not enough for a blitzkrieg, so what is the reason behind it? Well, maybe this is just a show of support for fellow member state Turkey. Well, NATO, quote, is the only military organization around which aims to contain Russia, whose forced military buildup in the Middle East will be used by NATO as a justification for its own, said defense analyst Vladislav Shirgin. And he told that to Zvezda television channel in Moscow. Sorry about that. Quote, it is with this in mind that the United States is going to set up a special military grouping in Turkey and the deployment of U.S. armor in Eastern Europe as part of this plan. Washington plans to send around 12,000 tanks, armored vehicles, and artillery pieces to Central and Eastern Europe to move around the region during NATO drills. So as we've been reporting all summer, we have been tracking all of the military exercises of NATO, of Russia, of China. You can go back into our channel and you can review all the military exercises. Profoundly enormous, history-making military exercises. And we've called it from day one that these military exercises are shows of force to Russia, because NATO has come out flat out and said, look, Russia is the threat. Now they throw ISIS in there too, but when Russia sees this, they only respond in kind. And then they go ahead and do military exercises and they call out NATO as the target. So now people on both sides are amplifying their militaries, and they're stating that this may be all to the end of fighting Russia outright. Now, as we can see here with all the provocation that's going on in the Middle East with Turkey, that could very well be on the horizon. Obviously, nobody wants that, but we can only pray that cooler heads prevail and a de-escalation actually will occur. So, but right now, that doesn't seem like that's going to happen, because there's constant escalation on both sides.
Breaking news. The Federal Reserve adopted a rule limiting its flexibility to rescue struggling firms during a crisis. In simple terms, the Fed ends too big to fail lending to collapsing banks. The Federal Reserve is cutting its lifeline to big banks, which will be in a financial trouble. That means Fed stops to pump money into the financial system.
So they tried some crazy things. Billion-dollar bailouts, the likes of which we've never seen. A trillion-dollar stimulus package. And in an unprecedented move, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates to zero, making the cost of borrowing money effectively free. Fast forward to 2015. The bailouts are paid off. The stock market is back, and so's the economy, but money is still cheaper than it's ever been. Rates are still at zero. Now that's all about to change. It's a key moment. The Fed raising interest rates is the final sign of the economy's return to normal. But normal might hurt a little. When the Fed increases rates, banks raise the prime rate, a benchmark index used to set all kinds of consumer loans, credit cards, car loans, home equity lines of credit, private student loans. The bet is the first rate hike will be small, but if you've got a variable rate card, you'll feel it right away. Mortgage rates are headed higher too. Now, they don't move in lockstep with the prime rate, but they're expected to move up gradually. For you savers, rising rates are great news. For years, you've earned next to nothing on CDs and in bank accounts. A Fed rate hike will be a win for savers, but a loss for investors. Near zero interest rates have pushed people into the stock market because they couldn't earn a decent return anywhere else. If higher interest rates make the stock market less attractive for investors, it potentially means the end of this 6-year bull market. Brace yourself. For the first time in more than 9 years, the Fed is set to raise rates, and pretty much everyone will feel it.
This is it, guys. World War III is about to start. Any moment now. And we will have the dollar collapse and the US bond market collapse. Sooner than few might think. Just remember, when World War III will start, your biggest asset will be your good health and sharp mind. So do not forget to watch my video on chemtrails detox, the link below this video. In this video I want to share with you some facts. International Monetary Fund has approved China's renminbi to become reserve currency. The executive board's decision to include renminbi into special drawing rights basket is an important milestone in the integration of the Chinese economy into the global financial system. So now China has its currency included into world's currency reserve basket, and China also has so much gold that its next step could be to start lending out Chinese currency to BRICS nations. Let's have a look at the next article. So there you go. BRICS Bank is about to start borrowing in yuan. So China's currency has gained a new global currency status, and now it's a time to start lending out money to BRICS nations. BRICS New Development Bank operations could be started by borrowing in Chinese currency. So what we have is that BRICS countries add up to about 40% of world's trade. So if those countries will start borrowing money in Chinese currency, that means those countries will stop using dollars and stop borrowing in dollars. The currency power and control will shift to China. Of course, it's not going to happen overnight, but the big trends are pointing out towards that direction. Let's have a look at the next article, which says that the United States Treasury will cut next year bonds insurance to soften the possible negative consequences to the US economy. Can you read between the lines? Now listen to this. In 2016, net insurance of US Treasury notes is expected to decline by 26% to $422 billion. So if the bond market will collapse, the insurance companies, whatever they are, they will have to pay out only $422 billion. Not bad at all if you're about to default on $18 trillion debt. Let's look at the following article, which talks about that Saudi bank deposits see the biggest drop in 25 years. The drop in deposits in October in absolute amount is probably the biggest since the 1990s. There are payment delays from the government to contractors, which is one of the reasons for the decline in private sector deposits, and public sector deposits are shrinking as the government is running a deficit.
I will not put American boots on the ground in Syria. We should not be drawn once more into a long and costly ground war.
Putting boots on the ground, I think, would be a profound mistake.
It will not involve American combat troops fighting on foreign soil. The resolution we've submitted today does not call for the deployment of U.S. ground combat forces to Iraq or Syria.
He never said there was never going to be U.S. boots on the ground. And as a matter of fact, there's more than 3,000 U.S. troops in Iraq right now in a training, advising, and assisting capacity.
3,500 troops and more on their way is not a big ground operation.
What? 100,000 foreign troops, including 90,000 troops from Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Jordan, and 10,000 troops from United States will be deployed in western regions of Iraq.
It is now time for us to do our bit in Syria, and that is why I ask my colleagues to vote for this motion tonight.
I personally reached out to my counterparts in 40 countries around the world in the coalition and asked them to contribute more. The United States is prepared to assist the Iraqi army with additional unique capabilities to help them finish the job.
You will be surprised to know what tortefaux fruits and vegetables can do to your health. To learn more, click the card there or click the link below this video. Earlier this month, President Putin has ordered to deploy S-300 and S-400 Triumph missile systems to the air bases in Syria. S-400 is the next generation surface-to-air missile systems that can destroy basically any target in the air or on the ground. Russia now has a number of air bases in Syria, and that number of air bases is to increase. Putin has ordered to protect all territory of Syria by using S-300 and S-400 missile systems. That means any provocation against Russia will lead to a major war in Syria.
I order to act in the toughest way. All parties threatening the Russian forces and our infrastructure on the ground are to be destroyed immediately.
России. Слава народу-победителю! С праздником! С Днем Великой Победы! Ура!
Vladimir Putin has praised the Russian cruise missiles fired against terrorists in Syria from the sea. Putin hopes that no nukes will be needed against ISIS. Guys, it's an indirect warning that Putin can nuke ISIS if the situation gets very bad in Syria and Iraq. Russia and Iran are in talks on the deliveries of the Russian-made all kind of weapons, as Iran is interested to replace outdated military equipment. I think that it's a cover for Russia to deliver military equipment to Iran. It is obvious that all sides in Syria, Iraq, and Iran are preparing for full-scale military conflict that will lead to a World War III.
The U.S. and ISIL actually, believe it or not, actually have aligned strategic interest. Both of these states, and I would include Turkey in there too, all three of those states want to see the overthrow of the Assad regime.
You see, there are many reasons why all this fighting happening in Syria and Iraq, where ISIS has taken control of certain towns and regions. But there is one obvious reason, and it all has to do with resources. According to some sources, there are 2 trillion euro worth of gas, oil, and some very rare minerals in the ground in that area where all this fighting taking place right now. Click the card there to watch the next video.